this was a bad one. I mean, I was really, I'm not, it's been 2 weeks for me and I'm still coughing and more tired than usual. Like I need a lot more sleep than I normally do. Okay. We do not have, I think Nick Pilch is excused tonight, so we'll go ahead and get started. I will call to order the special and regular meeting of the Albany City Council for June 3rd, 2019. We have come out of a closed session and gave direction to staff. And we will now begin a work session on the biennial budget covering fiscal years 2019 to 20 and 2020 to 21. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to introduce our Finance Director, Heather Rowden, to provide the substance of your presentation tonight, but I'd also like to take a minute to acknowledge that several of our department heads are here this evening. Appreciate you all attending. And in case you have any detailed questions related to a specific department.
All right, so we are going over the biennial budget. It covers fiscal year 2019-20 and 2020-21. And so first, I kind of wanted to go over what the general fund is, because the operating budget is mostly coming out of the general fund. So the general fund is basically all of the money that the city uses to further Albany's mission. So it's items that the city would fund regardless of where we get the money. It includes general government, so elected officials, administration, finance, HR, all of that kind of stuff, as well as the fire department, police department, public works, and recreation. All other funds are considered special revenue funds, and so that's the difference between general fund and special revenue fund. So I know there's a lot going on this slide, but this is a chart of the city's expenses and revenues since the 2013-14 budget year, and these are budgeted numbers, not actuals, so that you can see the history of where we've budgeted. Now, in the staff report, I talk about how we're kind of changing a little bit the way that we're budgeting, moving things from coding expenses directly to special revenues to coding them to the general fund if we're going to fund them regardless of where the revenue comes from. And you can see we used to do that because you'll see a drop from 2013-14 to 2014-15. And that drop is attributed to taking those expenses out of the general fund and coding them to special revenue funds. And then obviously since then, expenses have been increasing, and for the most part, revenue obviously hasn't kept up. Yes, so next. Our revenues come from really 5 main sources, property tax being the largest. And city property taxes have remained fairly level. Even during times of economic downturns, the assessor's information has shown that Albany's home prices rebounded a lot quicker than everyone else in the county. So our property taxes are, a fairly stable source of revenue. And then we have sales taxes and franchise and other taxes are the majority of the rest of the revenue, and those are a little bit more based on economic. And approximately a quarter of the city's total revenue comes from our top 10 taxpayers.
And what's the distinction between sales and, can we go back to the previous slide? Sales and franchise and other taxes. I know that's kind of those are terms of art. They don't necessarily mean what they sound like.
So sales taxes are taxes on the consumer that are based on items that you purchase. Sales tax technically includes use tax and transaction taxes. The transaction tax is the local option sales tax that we talk about. That's included in what we're calling sales tax here. So it's on the items that you buy in Albany, or for vehicle purposes, if you're an Albany resident. And then for franchise and other taxes, this slide talks about really what those other taxes are. So we have franchise taxes on electric, gas, garbage, and cable. And then we have utility users tax, electric, gas, and telephone. We have property transfer tax, racetrack taxes, and transient occupancy or hotel taxes. But they're all so small that listing them out in the pie chart individually or even in the budget individually is less than useful. And then the question has also come up, what is other revenue? And so other revenues include rents and leases, donations, sponsorships, insurance claim proceeds, and just other miscellaneous revenues that, again, are small individually, so we just lump them together. So in the budget, we have changes. I wanted to talk about taxes. We're not actually increasing property tax. I'm trying to, previously we've budgeted more than we've brought in, so I'm trying to even that out, in addition to anticipating potential recession in the next year or so. So I'm just keeping the budget the same so that we stay even. Investment earnings, for some reason, we've only been budgeting about $15,000 a year. We make more than that, so we increased the revenue that we're projecting to get to $300,000 because that's more in line with what we've actually been bringing in. And then transfers in, there's a large increase in transfers in when you look at the summary page on the budget, and that's because of the change from special revenue fund coding to coding expenses to the general fund, and the charging administrative fees to some of those special revenue funds that we previously hadn't charged. So moving on to expenses, 75% of the city's expenses are salaries and benefits. So really 25% is what we're looking at when we look at, what department heads can change or, play with. The rest is contracted by MOUs or other things like that. On the right, I put what percentage of each department's budget is salaries, so you can see, department by department, really what they're looking at. The general government at 40% is misleading because general government includes non-departmental expenses like citywide insurance, and IT expenses and other things like that really are citywide, but you don't really, code out to individual departments. So, and then the percentage of the budget when you look at expenses, 61% of general fund expenses are for public safety and public works. And then again, when we look at public safety, 88 to 89% of their budgets are salaries. So changes for next year. We have a handful of changes. There aren't that many. Staff changes. We're suggesting to add a management analyst to Public Works. We're suggesting to add a recreation coordinator 2 position full-time in recreation. And we're reclassifying a position in community development. So the management analyst in public works is going to be helping with grant administration, regulatory tracking, contract administration, things like that. The recreation position, we basically took 2 part-time positions and are making it a full-time position to help in recruiting and retaining qualified employees. And then the community development assistant, we're taking an office associate position and reclassifying it. And then the other change is disaster preparation and recovery has been spearheaded by the fire department, and a lot of those expenses have been coded to the fire department, but they're really citywide expenses. So we're putting them under risk management, and we added a little bit this year. So, what are we doing next? The city is looking at revenue diversification. So we're looking at enforcement of transient occupancy taxes and potentially updating our transfer taxes. The finance department is working on putting together policies to bring in front of the council to kind of guide the city as a whole on, where we want to end up financially and what we're looking for. We'll be bringing you the capital improvement budget soon. Again, this is the operating budget and does not include major capital improvements, just small equipment and things like that. Again, we're monitoring for a potential recession. So, everyone keeps saying, economists have predicted 5 of the last 2 recessions. So we're going to watch it. Pension costs. We need to monitor our pension costs, and we're planning on really cataloging, and planning for asset replacement. All right.
So that concludes the overall presentation. If the council would like to conduct a study session, ask any questions that you have, and give us direction as we move towards bringing the budget back to you for adoption at your June 17th meeting.
Who would like to start? Michael?
Let me start. Pension costs. What's the schedule for us hearing about the actuarial data, and what do we know? What can you tell us at this point?
So we do an actuarial evaluation and update every year. The city did recently contract with a third party to do kind of an overall, where are you comparatively, what would your best next steps be? And we are planning to bring that in front of the council in the fall. So with some suggestions on, here are the things we think we can do to help, work on that.
We're going to see the CIP fairly soon, correct? And when we do, is that going to have budget numbers attached to it at our next meeting?
Yeah, the CIP budget will likely come back to you in early fall with an update on status of projects implemented and any newly proposed projects, any adjustments thereof, and funding allocated. There are some unfunded projects included in the CIP as well.
Right. I mean, my sort of visualization is we have a chunk of money and we go down the line and we just sort of stop where the money runs out. That's.
Yeah, depending on the funding resources, some are sustained for specific purposes.
Right. Grant funding for certain things.
Sewer, so on.
In relation to CIP, can you just talk briefly about what isn't in the general fund? We all have all these specific funds. A lot of them are for sewer and infrastructure. Can you say a little bit about those?
Sure. So we have a number of special revenue parcel taxes. We have the open space, a couple of them. We have library. We have the sidewalk. We have sewer fees. We have special revenue funds that are Measure B, BB, VRF. They're specific for sidewalks, bicycle and pedestrian ways, and paratransit. And then we have a number of other funds. Most of the special revenue funds are for capital planning. Some are for kind of maintenance and day-to-day stuff, but for the most part, they are specifically for capital planning.
So streets, for example. So what happens if we run out of money in one of those funds? Or if we don't budget appropriately, or there's cost overruns? Can we pull money out of general funds to backfill?
Definitely. You can, at any time, you can take money out of the general fund to use however you would like, within reason, but you cannot go the other way. You can't pull from special revenue fund for other things.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. See if I'm on. Yep. Thank you. I had a bunch of questions, but a lot were answered when we met earlier. So there was still one that I was curious about, which was the money that we get from CAL FIRE, which comes for the, when we go out and we send our brush truck out and our guys to fight fires all over the state. Where is that? Would that be sort of under basically the charges for expenses or for services, or the other category? And
It's under, I think it's under other in the pie chart, but in your budget document, it's under revenue from other agencies. Mm-hmm. And it is specifically in the fire budget, but yeah, it's revenue from other agencies.
So is that money directed directly to the fire budget, or does it just go into the general fund and then we pay out of that too?
It goes into the general fund. We get reimbursed dollar for dollar for, I think it's dollar for dollar, right?
We do get compensated for overhead. I wouldn't say we make money on it, but we recover more than our overtime cost for sending that, because they give you money for management and apparatus and so on and so forth. So that's basically, overtime is where you're going to see a big increase, because that's where almost all the costs are, 100% of the costs. And in the OES reimbursement is where they reimburse us at a value higher than the actual cost of overtime.
So does that help for some of the capital expenses, like we get a new brush truck, or is this strictly for manpower or person power in the fire department?
So all the revenue or reimbursement that comes back from the state goes into the general fund. It doesn't directly go back. Most of the time, it never goes back into the fire department fund. Right. It goes into the general fund. So we send a cost sheet of what it costs for our personnel, and then they add in for apparatus and overhead expenses for that. And we take that out of our general fund operating expenses from the fire department that pays for that. If there's something that broke on a fire or flat tire or something that's happened because of the incident, they will reimburse us for those types of damages or repairs.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Because the nature of these fires is so wildly unpredictable. How do we get compensated in a reasonably quick way? I mean, a month or two, or do we wait 6 months or a year? How long?
For the most part, it's over a few months. When you have a big federal deployment, it could take a little bit longer. There is some concern coming up with the United States Fire Service that their reimbursement is going to change on what they'll be willing to pay versus the agreement that we have through the state. Right now, we have an agreement with the Forest Service, but theirs looks like it's going to be quite different. So we're going to have to make a decision if we're going to send resources out and make sure that we're reimbursed for the proper rate.
Okay.
Okay. So when I look at this and I see, as you said, there's been this kind of changes in the way we're recording all these things. So when I see several $100,000 in one column for 1 year and the next year it's zero, it's because we've kind of redone the way we're inputting this into the books.
For the most part. The only thing that comes to mind that was purposefully done is elections under city clerk. We're not having an election in the next budget cycle, in theory, so we wouldn't budget for one.
Okay. So, yeah, I wondered about that because I saw that the city clerk soon went down, then I thought, well, this probably has to do with the budget for 2020, 21 will be where we have an election.
Right.
Okay, well, that's okay for me at the moment.
Vice Mayor McQuaid, any questions?
No, you were kind enough to answer all my questions while on vacation. Don't like that.
Okay, I think I've largely had my questions answered as well. One thing I do want to just be sure we talk about a little bit so that we're clear, especially if, the public is interested in what is occurring with our budget. We are budgeting an increase of 5.26%, disregarding the restructuring according to the staff report. The increase, it would seem, is a lot. The only position that we are actually adding is the Public Works position. The other two positions are effectively being restructured, and existing positions are in effect being enhanced somewhat. And apart, when you take the excess over the cost of living type of increases, am I correct in understanding that most of the increase over the cost, over inflation, is the addition and restructure, the addition of that one Public Works position, and perhaps some to the restructuring of the other two positions? Are there other significant changes that you think make up for that increase?
No, it's really just adding, some of it is adding back in things that were left out of last year's budget.
Yeah.
So again, it's the amount that we're increasing this year is similar to the amounts that we've increased in the past, percentage-wise.
Well, yeah, but 6% year over year may not turn out to be sustainable, and that's the next thing I wanted to. This is really more of a comment than a question, so actually I'll wait and let people have a chance to do some comments first. Councilmember Barnes, did you have comments you wanted to make? No. Councilmember Moss?
I think my only comment is, this is one of the clearer budgets I've looked at while I've been on council, and I thank you for that. I hope that this is the end of the kind of, for lack of a better word, tinkering that we're doing in terms of the way we're writing this all down, because it is a little hard to follow when things go from zero to lots of numbers and then to zero again. But I know you're now in a system that you feel comfortable with. I hope you stick around for a while and then we keep this system so we can all follow it over a period of time, as opposed to having to relearn something which it's not, my strongest suit anyway. So that would be my general comment.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McQuaid, any comments? Okay, then I'll make my comments. One really kind of big picture comment and concern that I have about the city finances is just that we have pension obligations that hopefully we will understand better when we have this analysis in the fall, that could turn out to be a significant hit on future budgets. We also have a lot of deteriorating infrastructure and it's not clear that the pass-through funding that we're getting is enough to keep up with deterioration, much less restore what has already deteriorated. And one way to think about infrastructure deterioration is it's a kind of loan against the future. We're spending now on other things. People in the future will have to come in and spend money to get that infrastructure rehabilitated. And meanwhile, we still have that pension overhang. So with those two things pressing against our future budgets, I want to be careful about going on any assumption that we can increase at 6% or whatever percent per year. I think that when we have those long-term plans and information in place, and it's part of our strategic plan to develop a long-term infrastructure plan. When we have those things in place, we may need to revisit some of our existing budget and plans to check whether we really have our priorities where they need to be. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Just one other note, which is, again, more for those who might be listening and concerned about the city's finances. The comprehensive annual financial reports are moving along as planned and predicted, and we do expect to have them complete timely this year, meaning in December of 2019.
Yes.
We'll be caught up. Thank you.
You're going to ask for public comment?
Yes, I was just checking whether you had anything. Okay, then I'd like to open this to public comment. Do we have any requests? No. Okay. Oh, we do. We do.
My name is Margie Marks, and when we were dealing with the soda tax, one of the proposals was for the senior center for blood pressure checks and for podiatry. And some council members thought it would be better coming out of the general fund. 20% of our population is seniors, and these were two, health needs that were identified by the seniors. I know that the cities of El Cerrito and Emeryville have the fire department come, and they do blood pressure checks on the seniors there, and that would be, one way of, I don't know what kind of resources we have for using them in that way, but so where in the budget would those items go?
Well, since this is a work session, we can respond to questions like this.
So senior services is under recreation, and all of those services would be under the contract services or professional services line item under other expenses in the youth and senior services division of the recreation department.
Okay. So what do we need to do to make sure that this gets, if it's agreeable, I don't think that my word is the last word on this, to get this to happen?
This was one of my questions actually as well, and as I understand it, there is funding available. It's a question of locating providers.
Exactly right. They are budgeted. It's a struggle to find a service provider that's reliable, and that's what staff's working on right now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You're doing a great job. Love the housing project.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back for anything final. Okay.
Hang on.
Sure, Councilmember Barnes.
Just the obvious point, when I'm looking at the roll-up for the revenues and the expenditures, I'm not sure you can get them up there, but in any case, they do show shortfalls in the next two fiscal years, and I'm pretty sure we went over this at one point, but I think, one, it's escaping my mind, and two, for the sake of people we ought to take a look at it. That's much faster than I can work on. Thanks. There. That's it, right there. Click on it, please. There, see those numbers in red at the bottom? Can you tell us about those?
Sure. So for the current year, 2018-19, there was a $1.8 million deficit in the general fund that was budgeted. For this coming year, the July 1st, 2019 through June 30, 2020 year, we got that down to, it's $894,000. With some increases in revenue and some, just really honing in our expenses. I anticipate that we can get that even farther down. Again, we are looking at revenue enhancements and diversification in addition to the fact that, we have a new system, we have new staff. So we're really looking at the budget and making sure that we're budgeted appropriately. Those numbers look terrifying, but in the past, we have not had, even if we've budgeted a deficit, we haven't come in with a deficit. And I don't anticipate having a deficit for this year, even though there's one budgeted. I do anticipate having some money left over.
And just to add to that, with Heather's quarterly financial updates, you can see that trend continue over time in terms of how we're looking overall.
And those will continue indefinitely, so.
So we will have opportunity to respond if we, excuse me, sorry. We will have an opportunity to respond as the numbers come in if we need to make adjustments to our course.
Mm-hmm.
And as a reminder, the council usually sees the budget twice a year with a mid-year budget update. And although this is a 2-year budget, you would see it again in the second year. So you basically see it twice a year.
Okay. Then Heather Rowden, I just want to say the improvement in the transparency of what we receive and the format, the way that we can understand and that the public will be able to understand our budgeting is really, really impressive. And I'm excited about it and excited to see our CAFR process getting back on track. And we really appreciate your great work.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that we are, our work session is adjourned, and we have about a 23-minute break until the actual council meeting begins.
If anyone else would like to speak during public comment period, please fill out the speaker card and turn them in to me, please. Thank you.
The house is still there. Right, we figured if I heard fire trucks going out, then that probably wasn't.
Fire chief, could you go check on? No, I left thinking it needed some caffeine, and I thought I turned the teapot on.
Electric teapot, that's the two words.
I'm sorry?
Did you leave it on the burner?
No, I didn't. It was turned off. And I had grabbed a Coke instead, so I grabbed another one. Either make some more tea or grab a Coke.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, and then I drove down Solano to see if there's any coffee places still open. So my emergency.
That's good. Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Albany City Council for June 3rd, 2019. And would you please join Councilmember Moss in the Pledge of Allegiance, which is, we use the traditional form of the Pledge of Allegiance, which omits the phrase "under God."
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One day.
Can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Barnes?
Here.
Councilmember Moss?
Here.
Councilmember Pilch is absent, excused. Vice Mayor McQuaid? Here. Mayor Nason?
Here. And we will go on to ceremonial matters. Vice Mayor McQuaid will present a certificate of recognition to Dwayne Silverstein.
I'm thrilled to honor Albany resident Dwayne Silverstein for his many years of work to preserve, protect, and improve our environment. Since 1999, Dwayne Silverstein has been the executive director of Seacology, an international non-governmental organization with the sole focus of preserving islands, their fragile habitats, vanishing species, and historic cultures throughout the globe. For 18 years prior to heading Seacology, he was the executive director of the Goldman Fund, one of California's largest philanthropic foundations. He was instrumental in creating and heading the Goldman Environmental Prize, which has been dubbed the Nobel Prize of the Environment by National Geographic and also by news medias around the globe. Over his career, he has visited 200 islands in 77 nations. He has met with presidents of the United States, secretaries general of the United Nations, kings, heads of state, indigenous chiefs throughout the world on behalf of the environment. His work has been covered in media such as Time Magazine, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the New York Times. He has written articles which have appeared in over a dozen international publications. In 2009, he was selected by a public vote, this is important to me, as a national all-star among us to be honored by Major League Baseball at the All-Star Game in St. Louis. In 2010, Silverstein was given the Jefferson Award for Public Service. In giving Silverstein a 2010 Coastal Hero Award, Sunset Magazine called him a superhero of the deep. In early 2012, he was invited to give the closing speech on the state of the Earth's island for the TEDx conference in South Africa's Cape Town. In January 2015, His Serene Highness Prince Albert II honored him on behalf of Seacology for outstanding innovation in a ceremony in Monaco. Widely considered one of the world's foremost experts on islands, he is a National Fellow of the Explorers Club and a Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society. In 2018, he accepted the United Nations Momentum for Change Climate Action Award on behalf of Seacology. Under his leadership, Seacology was named one of the top 15 nonprofit organizations to work for. Although Seacology is technically located in Berkeley, it is on the border of Albany, and I think we can claim it as our own. Would you like to say a few words? Oh, I'm supposed to give you this.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored. I want to clarify that Major League Baseball honored me for my volunteer work, not for my baseball skills. I wish it were the other way around. But one thing I'm very proud of that the Vice Mayor didn't mention is I have been an Albany resident since 1984, and my wife and I sent both of our kids K through 12 here, and I absolutely love Albany. Just a few words about Seacology, the organization I head. Most people don't know it, but the vast majority of animal and plant extinctions on this planet have taken place on islands. A leading biologist for the Smithsonian Institution called the rate of extinctions on islands one of the most swiftest and profound biological catastrophes in the history of our planet. And Seacology is tackling that problem. We have now launched projects, 311 projects in 60 countries around the world. And as the Vice Mayor kindly pointed out, we've very quietly been working on Solano Avenue for so many years and have just keep on raking in these awards. The one from the Prince Albert, for example, was to be as the most innovative NGO in the entire world out of several million, an award you can't apply for or whatever, and is open to any NGO in any field in any country. Anyway, I'm really very delighted with this honor, thrilled to be here, thrilled to be an Albany resident, and thank you all very much. So, thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you here in Albany. Our next ceremonial matter will be a proclamation for Elder Abuse Awareness Month. And would the person receiving the proclamation please join me at the podium? City of Albany Proclamation in recognition of Elder Abuse Awareness Month, June 2019. Whereas, although the elder population is the largest growing segment in the country, elder abuse is one of the most underreported crimes in the United States, where it is estimated that only 1 in 14 cases of elder abuse comes to the attention of adult protective services and/or law enforcement agencies. And whereas victims of elder abuse include both men and women of diverse educational, socioeconomic, or ethnic backgrounds who have been victimized by strangers and/or persons they know who may occupy a position of trust, including family members, neighbors, friends, and others with whom the elder interacts. And whereas the Alameda County Social Services Agency and Adult Protective Services responds to reports from individuals, concerned citizens, social service and health providers, and law enforcement representatives about elders who may be physically or financially abused, neglected, or exploited. And we have here a representative from Adult Protective Services. And whereas the Alameda County District Attorney's Office Elder Protection Unit, and we have a representative of the Alameda County District Attorney's Office with us, and its Victim Witness Division provide a network of services to elders who are in danger of becoming or who have become victims of abuse, and which services include holding community workshops to promote crime prevention awareness, perfect timing there, assisting with locating services for elders, working with the Albany Police Department as well as other professionals, and prosecuting cases of elder abuse and neglect. And whereas the Albany Senior Center provides a comprehensive array of services as well as social and recreational programs to meet the needs of the elder population, thereby enhancing their quality of life and helping them to remain active, healthy, safe, and independent. And whereas the City of Albany recognizes that both the awareness of elder abuse and neglect, as well as reporting instances of suspected elder abuse and neglect, will help keep our elders and our community safer. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council hereby recognizes June 2019 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month and June 15th, 2019 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in the city of Albany, in recognition of elders being valuable members of our city and having the right to live safely and securely in our community. And would you like to say a few words?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Albany residents, and guests. My name is Cheryl Poncini. I am a Deputy District Attorney here in Alameda County, assigned now to our Elder Protection Unit, where I've worked for the last 7 of the 42 years I've been in the office. So I'm probably older than many of you who are here. First of all, I want to thank you, the City Council, and the city for again recognizing June as Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Every time I come here, or somebody from my office comes here to accept this proclamation, we've been doing this for the last 7 years, we always want to make sure that we thank you for keeping this issue on the community's radar, because it's not going away anytime soon, unfortunately, especially with the number of elders growing every single day. So on behalf of DA Nancy O'Malley, thank you. Normally when I'm here, I talk about things like the cooperation between the DA's office and Adult Protective Services, and we do work very closely together, as well as with the Albany Police Department. But the very brief message I want to give today is on the same idea, but slightly different. And that is the issue of gaps in services to elders and dependent adults in our community. I'm the committee coordinator of a county-wide task force, is the Alameda County Elder and Dependent Adult Abuse Multidisciplinary Team. And the primary focus of that task force is to identify gaps in services to elders and dependent adults throughout Alameda County and to brainstorm ways that those gaps can be reduced or eliminated. So we've been talking with agencies for quite some time, but the one group we haven't talked with are elders and dependent adults. So I'm scheduling 4 forums throughout Alameda County. The first one will be this Thursday, and there may be, yes, a copy of this is on the screen. It's going to be at the North Oakland Seniors Center. It's going to start at 10 a.m. with my Scam Jam Trivia Challenge, which is kind of an abbreviated version of what I normally do, but there are small prizes for the team that wins, which everybody loves. And it's a great way to see if you're up to speed on scam issues. And then about 11 o'clock, we're going to switch over to the public forum. And there are some specific questions we want to put to seniors and dependent adults. We want to hear their thoughts about gaps. It could be gaps in services, whether it's access to justice, whether it's health care access, access to affordable housing, access to decent food, access to transportation. Whatever it is, wherever it is, it doesn't have to be just here in the city of Albany. It could be anywhere in Alameda County. We'd like to hear from you. So please, even though this is being held in North Oakland Senior Center, feel free to join us. And I have a couple of extra flyers. If anybody's interested, I'll leave them with Madam Clerk or Madam Mayor. And again, I want to thank you for your attention, and I thank you for your support.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, City Council members and the residents of Albany. My name is Mario Suarez. I'm an APS supervisor with Alameda County Social Services, Adult Protective Services. I just wanted to accept this proclamation in honor of June, which is Elder Abuse Awareness Month, and June 15th, which is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Adult Protective Services and the District Attorney's offices are honored to be here to bring attention to elder and dependent adult abuse prevention and to be recognized today by your council. Throughout the year, APS actively combats elder and dependent adult abuse by providing services to at-risk clients and through our efforts at the county and state level to identify additional resources to aid in this fight. The month of June is particularly important because we highlight our efforts and bring attention to this fight by organizing events to bring awareness on a daily basis. This evening, I'd like to share the many events we have ongoing for the month of June. For this year, APS and community partners, including the District Attorney's Office, will have a strong Alameda County Fair presence with giveaways and information available to fair attendees. APS will hold a booth on both June 14th and June 15th at the county fair. We'll have information flyers, and pamphlets, how to report abuse, signs of different types of forms of abuse. So we'll be in full display on June 14th and June 15th. We've launched an AC Transit campaign and shopping center ad campaign. So keep an eye out when riding AC Transit and when shopping in the community. We'll have a full ad out on the bus stops. The ad will have the actual APS hotline number to report any kind of abuse that you may see out in the community. We've also expanded our BART advertising campaign this year through our partnership with Contra Costa, San Francisco, and San Mateo counties. We're also airing an APS commercial with the Xfinity cable provider throughout the month of June. And lastly, we'll continue to receive proclamations from all of the individual city councils across the county and from Board of Supervisors in recognition of this important month. As you all know, support of our city government is paramount to elder independent abuse, and we appreciate your support, not only in June, but throughout the year. So thank you again.
Okay, important information. We did hold 2 sessions prior to the opening of the regular meeting. One was a closed session to discuss labor negotiations, and we gave direction to council. The second one was a open session. It was a special session on the city budget. And there was no specific outcome, again, except direction to staff. So we turn to the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted on one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the City Council. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. Do we have members of the council wishing to pull items from the consent calendar? No. Do we have members of the audience wishing to pull items from the consent calendar? Mr. Okay, we have 5.7. Any others? Okay. Then may we have a report on item 5.7?
Good evening. I'll be fairly brief in my remarks on this, but on May 6th of this year, the City Council moved 5-0 to establish zoning classifications consistent with the general plan land use categories for the parcel located at Cleveland and Washington. So what this initial action did was assign zoning classifications for public facilities for the Peggy Thompson Pierce Street Park, and a zoning designation of R3 high-density residential for the parcel located at Cleveland and Washington. So this is coming back to you tonight for the second reading to formally amend the zoning map and establish those zoning classifications for the parcel.
Thank you. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Any comments? Okay, then let's hear from the public. How many members of the public have asked to speak?
3.
3? Okay.
Robert. We'll have Robert, and then Jackie, Jeff, and Leah.
I'm Robert Urhammer of 745 Pierce Street. I've been involved with Pierce Street Park and the acquisition of the parcel since 1991. When the parcel was finally acquired by the city in 2012, I brought up the issue that it should be zoned at that time. The council and the staff said it was premature. And then after the 2035 general plan was adopted in 2016, I again brought up the same issue, and it was called premature. And the general plan has in there provisions for basically making the whole parcel, the 4.1 acres, as a park in 3 phases. The first phase has obviously been built, and the other phases have never gone past just the idea. And then 2 years ago, when the park was actually dedicated, again, the idea was brought up to zone the parcel as public facilities for a park, and again, it was ignored. And so I feel that today, the actions of the council and what's been going on with staff has basically been very fast, and much faster than I would have expected, and also particularly that SAHA was talked to the city, several months ago, I think back in October, started the ball rolling to get this, and all of a sudden now, on May 6th, they brought up, the council brought up, and the staff brought up to the council, the idea of splitting the zoning of the Pierce Street parcel into public facilities and to R3. A lot of the neighbors, as I think you've already seen these, but I'll pass this out again. It's essentially the petitions that were signed by about 100 neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so I urge you to consider this and to take care and how in the future, and also for this time, how fast things move along. Because it seems very fast to me, and it's almost like what I might call a railroad job, but I wouldn't put it in those terms, that all of a sudden it went from being essentially not being zoned, and they said it was premature to be zoned, all of a sudden getting zoned. And so I object to that, and I think the public has a right to know what's going on with it, and also, what the agreement will be with SAHA in terms of the purchase price and so forth. I haven't heard anything on that, but maybe that's premature yet at the present time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jackie?
Greetings to the council and mayor. Jackie Armstrong, 759 Pierce Street, Albany, California. I've lived here 84 years on Pierce Street. I do oppose this ordinance number 2019-06. I am disappointed that we were presented with a plan of 60 units, 60 garages, and that could easily be 200 people in our already congested neighborhood, a toxic neighborhood because of the freeway and the exhaust and the fumes from many, many cars, hundreds of cars. I have lung disease, and my doctor said probably, I mentioned where I live by the freeway, he said yes, probably 84 years of living by a freeway with tire dust and exhaust could have helped cause my lung condition. So long-term living there is probably not the best idea. I am hoping to get some feedback on the environmental impact study on our air quality, our noise, and our traffic. And I'm hoping before a decision is made, there are some of those reports done and available. I am in favor of low-income and affordable housing. I realize it's a big issue and a big problem in all the cities. If anything, we could maybe live with 20 units, and then in 2 other locations in the city of Albany, another 20 units and another 20 units. That would give the people who live in these units would have the experience of not only living by the railroad tracks, by the congested freeway, but maybe in some other parts of Albany, near Solano, near BART. I already threw out a suggestion that there's an acre available, I'm sure, at Memorial Park. And I'm sure there's other areas. There are other parks in Albany with more land than Pierce Street Park. Okay. I would like more trees, of course, in our little mini park. And I feel sad that it's come to this point where we're going to lose a little bit of land in the future, since we're the most populated area in Albany. We're near the railroad tracks, near the freeway. I was hoping we could have a whole grove of wonderful trees. The oxygen comes to the leaves, and the tree stump sucks up all the toxic air. I guess that's it, isn't it? Well, I thank you and appreciate your listening, and good luck.
Thank you.
I thank you. That's my mom. I'm Jeff Armstrong. I also live at 759 Pierce Street in Albany. I also oppose the ordinance. This really comes down to a broken promise from the city of Albany. We have worked for almost 30 years to have a park in our neighborhood. We have recently been painted as we are against affordable housing and told, quote unquote, watch out what you're asking for. One may actually consider that as a threat, but we will look beyond that, being that the city feels they can say what they want to the voters without any recourse. For someone to apply that I or my family or my neighbors are against affordable housing is both very offensive and also very un-American. And honestly, it is further from the truth. This reminds me of the days when the government would pit the poor against the poor in order to push their agenda. I tell you, we are for affordable housing. The Washington-Cleveland area is one of the most diverse areas in Albany and is the lower income side of Albany. However, the issue is more than just the park. This side of Albany is the highest density and the most populated of all the other areas of Albany. There are thousands of cars that travel along Pierce Street, Cleveland, Washington every day, not only because of the residents, because of the shortcuts commuters use when the freeways are jammed up. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour, yet the average speed ranges anywhere from 35 to 50 miles per hour, which is a danger to our children as well as our seniors in the neighborhood. We gave up a sound wall many years ago to have a park to help keep the noise levels down. Yet no trees have been planted in its place. Adding trees will help enhance the area's green space and help reduce the toxin in the air caused by the hundreds of thousands of cars that go both on I-80 and 580, which meet right there, as well as the trains that run right next to Cleveland Avenue, right by where the park is. We preach diversity in this city, yet it would appear that we are going backwards by putting the poor in their own designated area again, down by the train tracks and the highways to keep them away from the rest of the city. We believe there is a way to help ease the housing issues along with keeping the promise of the city. And actually, speaking of the promise of the city, it'd be nice if our park was as nice as the parks located in the more affluent parts of town. I just drove by Terrace Park today, as well as Memorial Park. And go ahead, drive by Pierce Park and see Pierce Street and see which one looks nicer. But anyway, that's editorializing. Sorry about that. Instead of putting a 60-unit project in the park's location, like my mother stated, what about putting 20 units and have 2 other locations that could hold another 20 units? This would help keep the pollutants and traffic down. Why not help make all areas of Albany more diverse by putting more affordable housing units throughout Albany? We are not going away. We are looking for a compromise without having to go to court or go to the ballot. Albany is strong. We can get through this. Let's compromise and work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, I think you were next. No, okay. Okay.
Thank you. Hi, Leah here. I've been homeless for 4 years. I have a degree from Berkeley. I'm in graduate school right now. And I want to wholeheartedly support this ordinance. It is needed. The time will come where there will be no square inches left in Albany or anywhere else to build housing, and I think that we ought to support the gradual increase of, we need this. It's only going to get worse. Housing in our area is only going to get worse. I am concerned about the air quality, but in speaking to the architect last week, he said he's got all that handled in the design, so we ought not worry too much about that. Someone said at the presentation last week by Saha that they were concerned about the influx of people into the area. To me, that's code word for we don't want poor people in our neighborhood. The thing is, people have already fluxed into Albany. We live in cars, in vans, and RVs. Some of us go to work. We pay taxes. We have children that go to our very fine schools. We're already here. We're just asking for a place to live in here, to have walls and floors and a bathroom and a kitchen and a quality of life that we don't have now. So in supporting this ordinance to change the zoning so that we can put this building in, I think is a really good thing. And hey, this land where you guys are proposing to put it, it's kind of throwaway land anyway. It is not the most desirable place, and an interesting point was made, well, we don't want to stick all the poor people in one spot. Where else are we going to put them? This is kind of it in Albany. We don't have any spare land. Building little 20 units here and 20 units there. In Memorial Park, I think that's kind of full by now, but I just want to encourage you guys to work with this to find a good solution. I personally been homeless, as I said, for 4 years. I'm being housed next month, finally, in a Saha property in Gourmet Ghetto. Watch out, gang. So I will be relieved of my burden, but others won't. And I want to speak on their behalf that they be allowed to live in Albany and not be shunted way off to some other part of the world. We need to provide housing for all the residents of our town. And residents also includes people that live in their cars, in their vans, and their RVs. They contribute to this community, and having this, these 60 units may not be ideal in that location, but it's the best we got. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
How's it going, guys? My name is Omar Saba. I live at 700 Washington, across the street from the potential site. I want to speak to some of the things that you guys said last meeting that I was here. Peggy, you had said that we all need to do our part. All the cities need to do their part. How many of you live in the East Shore neighborhood? Can you raise your hands? I live there. How many of you live there?
Mayor?
Yeah, this isn't an appropriate.
Okay, so none of you live in our neighborhood.
No.
That's okay. That's okay.
The board decorum rules say that when you're at the dais, you address the board as a whole, not as individual members. That's just a long-standing rule.
I asked everyone who lives in East Shore neighborhood to raise your hand.
Let's keep going, because we're just eating up your time.
So,
Thanks.
Again, everyone should do their part. We all should do our part. I know what I do personally to support my community. There's a number of things I do. So I agree that we all should do our part to support the community. The poor community, the wealthy, the sick, everyone should be supported. The concern that I have is that a 60-unit apartment building in that location is ridiculous, and we all know it. One location, 60 units on that little spot where it gets backed up constantly. You're going to get people killed, and it's going to be on your heads. The other piece is that why aren't we looking at smaller buildings throughout the city of Albany? Why in one location? It is a little frustrating that you guys are trying to cram one location with 60 units. And you're talking about low-income housing, which, yeah, we do need, but why is it not being dispersed throughout the city? If we want to diversify Albany, which we need to do, because in my neighborhood, that's the diverse neighborhood, right? I bring diversity to that neighborhood, and many of my neighbors bring diversity to that neighborhood. And yeah, we should have 20 units in that neighborhood or 30 units in that neighborhood. But what about on Solano? What about up there? How would they feel? I'm sure that there's land, and I'm sure that we could put units in those neighborhoods, in your neighborhood, so we all can do our part, right? We all can step up and do our part to support the community. And I'll be looking into finding more properties and locations that we can do that, because I'm sure that you guys want that in all of Albany, so we do diversify Albany, right? That's what needs to happen. Putting people next to the railroad tracks, this woman has said that she has cancer. My wife is constantly sick. My kids get sick. You want to put 60 units there, right? I mean, we're already looking into our own thing for our own health, but you guys have to think about that, okay? That has to be considered. Think about the health of these kids that are going to be living down there. I get it. We need to have housing. It's true. But 60 units is crazy. Think about it. If you had 60 units in a neighborhood like that, in your neighborhood where you lived with your kids, it's crazy. Thank you.
Do we have additional speakers? Okay, then I'll bring it back to council. Any final comments on this item before we begin voting on the consent calendar?
I have several questions.
Sure.
The first is, we spent a lot of time dealing with Washington Street between Pierce and Cerrito. We brought a fire truck in there. We made sure it was wide enough. We had a plan. Where is that plan at in being built out? Are all the changes that we were recommended have been completed?
I'm going to have to defer that to Jeff.
At this stage, the Public Works Department is taking the lead on implementing the project. Mark, do you want to? Sorry, I didn't realize you were here.
So this is the traffic calming on Washington Hill and the bulb and the striping. So we finalized the design, and we're working with the contractor to change order it into our current paving project. So if we get all the details, and we're hoping to bring it into the next council meeting or the council meeting after that for approval.
Okay. That was next question. About the old Caltrans property, there's a lot of it, and I recall it being in some pieces, at least in the old maps it did, but maybe that was because the old freeway off-ramp or on-ramp, whatever it was, cut through there. But considering all the old Caltrans property, has it all been rezoned now, or is some of it still unzoned?
With your action this evening, it will be zoned in its entirety.
Okay. We did go through a CEQA process for the park, and I specifically remember that because I had concerns about air quality, and I believe the consultants had less concerns about the air quality. But that's a public document that's still available for anyone to review. And we have done tons of traffic counts down there, right? On Cleveland and Pierce. So those are all available if anyone would like to see them. And this is going to be R3 zoning. That's high density residential. That is the same as the zoning in the apartment units just south of El Cerrito Plaza. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I think that is all my questions. I'll have some comments too, but.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Any other comments? Thank you.
Let's say hypothetically we did only put 20 units down there. Wouldn't we still need to rezone it R3?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Any other comments, Councilman?
I'll make a quick comment.
Thanks.
I think I'm repeating myself from a previous meeting, but basically, as I said before, there's no easy or great spot anywhere in Albany to do anything because we're pretty built out. When the opportunity came up that, and this idea arose of putting parking in this location where we had previously had a public works building planned, it checked off a number of boxes in terms of what we've been trying to do to increase housing. I would personally love to see more housing built on Solano Avenue, close to my neighborhood, close to the BART station. Wherever we can build it, I'm all for it. Part of the issues on a lot of other locations is that we don't have control over it, and this was a location where the city owned the property, so it was easier to make that transition into something other than a public works building, which it turned out not to be a very good place for. So I'll be supporting this tonight, but I would also agree with this idea that Pierce Street Park is unfinished. It's not the park that I imagined it was going to be. I think it still has a long ways to go. And I'm hoping that in the time I have left on council, we can see some more money put into it and some improvements. And very possibly some of those improvements would be planting more trees. Wherever we can get trees planted that the neighbors and people on Pierce Street are going to be okay with. I think that's a great idea. Perhaps we can figure out a way to work with Caltrans and the railroad to plant trees along Cleveland and have a more direct blockage down there. But anyway, those are my comments. I understand this is difficult for neighbors to think that this 60-unit development is going in, but I don't think the negatives are going to be nearly as bad as you might fear. And the positives, to my mind, are pretty great. So,
thank you. Councilmember Barnes, did you have an additional comment?
Yes. One thing I would like to point out is part of any general plan that cities like this do, we do something called the housing element, in which we are required to go through the town and identify spots where it's conceivable to build more housing. So anyone who wants to can look at the housing element and see that during the general plan process, we did a very diligent job of trying to identify potential spots for more housing. The trouble is we don't own them. There are businesses on Solano or San Pablo. There is one vacant lot on Solano, which drives me crazy, but we don't own it, and the older person who owns that lot is saving it for some reason, and he's not interested in selling it or building housing on it. So I would suggest, go ahead and look at that if you're interested. If you want to get a sense for where land is available in the city, that analysis has already been done. It's done over and over again. We update that every several years. And we're going to be updating it again in the next 5 or 10 years, I believe.
Sooner than that, 2 to 3.
I hadn't thought about fewer units. Generally with affordable housing developers need economies of scale. They like projects of 60 units because it's cost effective to build them. If they start breaking them into little pieces, it's very expensive and hard to get funding for them. But even if somehow we decided to go with fewer units, we have to do this rezoning anyway. So I will be supporting this tonight.
Thank you. Vice Mayor McQuaid, any questions or comments?
I really don't. I think I've said that I support this project. I would agree that there's more that needs to be done at Pierce Street Park. We did plant a tree a week or so ago, which is only one, but it is a step in the right direction. More trees, something on the field, whether it's turf, whether it's grass, whatever, we're looking at that. And looking, staff is always looking at other locations for housing within the city. And hopefully we'll be able to do things on San Pablo and on Solano and other places. But for now, this is the land that we own. It's the only land we own. So I, again, would support this project.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move consent calendar.
I'll second.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
And the motion carries for all consent calendar items.
Okay, we turn to the good of the city and public comment. This part of the agenda is for persons desiring to address the city council on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note that city policy limits each speaker to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the council's ability to take or discuss items that are not on the agenda. So such items are normally referred to staff for comment to a future agenda. Do we have comment cards for good of the city?
My name is Omar Saba. It's in regards to the corner of Washington and Cleveland.
No, this portion.
This has nothing to do with housing.
The portion of the agenda is.
This has nothing to do with the agenda.
Okay, if it does not have to do with the zoning.
Nothing to do with housing.
Okay.
Just yesterday, Sunday. Yeah, Sunday, they broke into my next door neighbor's car. They took her wheels and left the car on the curb. We need lighting down there, guys. It has to happen. You need to put lighting on that corner of Cleveland and Washington. It's ridiculous. There has to be lighting. They're stealing, breaking into cars. We need more lighting down there. It doesn't take much. You guys have a couple of LED light fixtures on some of the poles above us, but that block is super dark. There's tons of homeless people wandering around. There's tons of people coming in and out of Richmond on bikes. The police are always down there stopping them. We need to do something. We need more light, right? And so I don't know if it's the homeless people or if it's the people in other cities on the bicycles coming up and down the street. My car's been broken into twice. Her car got her tires taken off yesterday. We need light. You guys can make that happen. That's an easy fix. Can we get that done?
Thank you.
That's a yes.
Well, no,
You can't get that done.
It's part of that's part of our, you'll want to take a look at our capital improvement plan. That would be where this would come before us. I shouldn't be speaking with you on this. It's not really appropriate.
Okay.
We just take your public comment during this period.
Okay, we would really appreciate it if we get some light down there before somebody gets hurt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Norm Ludwig, resident and homeowner since 1991. Question, does the city own the property from Solano and Key Route Boulevard, the median there for the first block going towards the high school?
This is not an interactive forum. Please just give us your comment, and questions can be directed to staff following the meeting, okay?
I don't know if that property is owned by the city or not, but I would be interested to know the answer to that.
We'll get you the answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have other good of the city comments? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to council member reports on state, regional, and local meetings attended, and announcement of future meetings, and then the city manager's report. Who would like to start? We can start over here. Vice Mayor McQuaid.
Okay, since our last meeting, I attended the East Bay Economic Development Alliance General Meeting, the League of California Cities Division meeting, a planning meeting for United Against Hate, and also a CERT alumni meeting and a emergency preparedness business resiliency meeting, Alameda County Transportation Commission retreat. I spent today in Sacramento at the Governor's Emergency Management Preparedness Summit, and yesterday I had the pleasure of going to Memorial Park and watching or observing and talking to people at Play Like a Girl, which was a wonderful event sponsored by our Recreation Department. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnes.
Well, like I think most of the members on the council, I attended the community meeting with Saha about the project. We had kind of split the responsibilities because Peggy went up to she was our representative for the League of California Cities meeting. I thought that went very well. I also was in the city at the LGBTQ Center on Market to hear a talk by an economic geographer from UCLA, Michael Storper, and I had a small hand in organizing this meeting, but he spoke about the housing issues in the Bay Area and SB 50 as an economic geographer, and it was very interesting and very well received, and there should be a video of that, and I will get it to folks if they would like to watch it.
Thank you. No, okay, let's see. My activities was, first of all, recovering from the flu or whatever it may have been. Apologize to my fellow council members for my absence from the last meeting. I did attend a Stop Waste meeting. We continue to struggle with the recycling situation and the lack of recycling capacity and what we do with that. I would urge anyone with an interest in recycling issues to spend a little time on the Stop West website. There's a lot of really tremendous information available there. I also attended a couple of meetings of the Alameda County Transportation Commission, including a retreat. Probably the most crucial thing to know is well, two things. We are continuing to work on the San Pablo corridor project, and public meetings are continuing regarding that. I think there's been one in Berkeley, and there may be another one coming up in El Cerrito. Again, Alameda County Transportation Commission would be the place to learn about that. We also had a presentation on a potential really major funding ideas for the 2020 ballot. There are advocates for both transportation funding and housing funding who are looking at the 2020 ballot as a potential target for major regional funding efforts. And I also attended the satellite housing project meeting. I think that's it. So, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of updates for everyone. The police department had a very successful coffee with the cops today. Thank you for all those that attended. It was at the community center. The department also attended a school safety symposium in Sacramento that was presented by the FBI. The training was a discussion among school administration, law enforcement, community members, and mental health professionals regarding how to better assess potential risk factors that can lead to a crisis situation or violent behavior at schools. I applaud our police department for taking the time and effort to attend that. Also in Public Works, as you'll see, we're very busy once again and continuously through the summer. The sewer repair rehab project on Solano has begun. You've probably noticed the traffic flow on other streets. Please bear with us. This is a very important project, and thus far I've seen some excellent work by our Public Works Department to ensure that the business community is as well prepared for this project as possible. The Phase 1, which is Curtis to Santa Fe, will be completed by June 10th. Phase 2 will begin on June 11th and is expected to be completed by June 21st. We have 4 phases in total, so here we go. The Memorial Park bathroom renovation is scheduled to be completed on Friday, June 21st. I don't think we'll have a ribbon cutting for the bathroom, but please look forward to that opening. And the paving project, again, I mentioned this last time, I'll continue to mention it. Pothole repair is a significant concern for us with all of the wet weather we've had. We will be doing a significant amount of potholing coming up this week through the next month, and slurry sealing on some of our streets and roads as well. So look forward to improvements on our roads. A couple of items to show you here. We had a Play Like a Girl event. It was a movie screening, but also the park event where girls came out and families of all kinds came out to learn about women's sports and girls in sports. We had about 250 people attend the film festival screening, and about 1,000 people attend the event in the park. A couple of other items of note here. CERT, our well-received community and emergency response team, is having a new 8-week CERT training. If you haven't taken the training, please sign up. It helps you prepare for a disaster in your community and what you can do to get your community and your block involved. And finally here, as we get into windy months, warmer months and windy months, there is a high probability that PG&E may turn off power intermittently. So we are working with people to understand this now and prepare for that. I know when the power goes out and you're not prepared, it can be a bit of a pain. So visit our website, prepareforpowerdown.com, just for some basic ideas and to start thinking about this and prepare. That's it, thanks.
Thank you. I should mention one additional set of issues, which is that I have been working since early this year with Mayor Arreguin in Berkeley and Rashi Kesarwani, who represents the portion of Berkeley immediately south of Albany, on the resolution of the encampment that became very heavily established last fall on the south bank of Cordonices Creek between East Shore and 2nd. And I'm glad, although with some mixed feelings, that the encampment has been resolved and the area will be protected going forward. But I think it's a good reminder as we talk about places for housing, there have to be places for shelter as well that are not on the banks of, that are not on wetlands, that are not under trees that will fall, that will not, that do not put people's lives at risk. And in this regard, I signed on to a mayor's letter that was put together and led by Mayors Schaaf of Oakland and Arreguin of Berkeley, but signed on to by a number of other mayors, asking Alameda County to reprioritize its homeless funding and focus its efforts, eliminate silos among different offices of the county that deal with homelessness, to prioritize 3 things. One being shelter, one being preventing homelessness, and one being addressing family homelessness, as those 3 as the top urgent priorities. And the Alameda County supervisors will be holding a forum later in the summer to address those policy concerns that have been raised by mayors in Alameda County. So I think that with that, we will move on to the presentations. We have a presentation scheduled with the Albany Library on its programs and services.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. I'm pleased to introduce Rachel Scher. She is the new Albany Library Manager and has started in January and is here tonight to present a brief overview of library programs and services.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me tonight. I have a little presentation I'm going to try to go through quickly so I can leave some time for questions. So I thought I'd start with our strategic plan for Alameda County Library. It's in progress right now, so this is a working this isn't the whole strategic plan, of course, but this, our vision statement is pretty solidified. It's kind, connected humans. We're focusing on 4 strategic areas of growth. 1, innovation, which we've defined as the ability of humans to continuously create their desired future. 2, justice, equality, diversity, and inclusion, which the administration likes to point out spells Jedi. Civic literacy, and healthy families, healthy homes. Of course, since I came to Albany, I've really appreciated so many strong partnerships we have. Some are new here. Our partnership with Albany Cares and East Bay Regional Parks are just in the beginning stages. We, of course, also have a huge support from our friends of the Albany Library, and the Albany Film Festival helps us provide really top-notch contemporary films and local filmmakers. And then our Brown Bag series, we partner with the YMCA. So I was going to speak quickly about each of these key partnerships. Albany Cares and Project Hope, I've been working with Sid and Anne Marie on. We're just in the beginning stages. We have a new information display in our lobby of the building, referrals and resources for individuals. We have a training coming up next week with Albany Cares on just resources for staff. As you might know or might not know, public library work, there's a big crossover with social work, but none of us are trained social workers, and we don't claim to be. We don't have that expertise. So I'm having an informational training with our staff on who in Albany Cares or elsewhere they can refer members to. And then we've got some programs that I'll speak more to that at a later date, but they're just in the beginning stages. One partnership I'm really excited about, we're one of the first libraries in the Bay Area to partner with East Bay Regional Parks on providing backpack checkouts. So members can come check out a backpack just like they would a book. It's a waterproof backpack. It's fairly large, so they can carry all their hiking gear in the backpack. It's got parking passes for the East Bay Regional Parks. It's also got an entrance pass, so they can attend the parks that have fees for free. There's binoculars with their carrying case, and there's Sibley guides and maps. We also have free takeaways for the first, I forgot how many people that check out a backpack, but they get a free water bottle and some other free maps and guides. Our Friends of the Library group is really strong, and even on a rainy day recently, they managed, I don't know if you remember, about 2-3 weeks ago, there was a huge storm on both days of their sale, and they still managed to raise over $5,000. And that really supports top-notch programming at the Albany Library. We also have an amazing partnership with the Albany Film Festival. For African American History Month, we had 4 very recent award-winning films, lots of them. 3 out of the 4 had local Bay Area roots. We had over 150 people attending. It was an overflow crowd. And we, of course, had Best of the Fest for the film festival. Our most recent film was The Whistleblower of My Lie. And we have regular local filmmakers come to the library and have post-discussion panels after the film screenings. We also have a very popular brown bag series. We have local writers, historians, naturalists, artists come and talk about their work. This tends to draw anywhere between 20 to 50 people. It's a big crowd in our little meeting room. our Birds of the Bay talk, which I wasn't here for because I started at the very end of January, and I think that was in the beginning of January. I'm told it was an overflow crowd. They had to turn people away, unfortunately, but we're bringing him back in the fall. His name's Bob Lewis, and we're going to arrange a bigger space. We also had another local writer talk about her book on the history of Jewish refugees sheltered in England. We had recently a popular butterfly decline and conservation speaker, and our most recent speaker, Joseph Bloom, has worked in Bay Area labor and photograph. He's a professional photographer. You can see one of his photographs in the corner there. Oh, I guess the lighting's not great, but we have his photographs now on display in the library. In fact, we've tried to tie a lot of the displays that we've had to the Brown Bag Speaker Series. So when we had the butterfly naturalist come, we also had a entomologist come and display their butterfly collection in our display cases. And of course, we have a lot of other programming at the library. This is just a snapshot of it. We have a lot more than I've listed here. We have crafts, technology workshops, of course, literature. I've worked with the Poet Laureate to bring back the poetry series. Actually, I wouldn't say bring back the poetry series because it's very different than the former poetry series. We have activity classes. We have film, of course. In addition to the Film Fest partnership, we have family films regularly, Oscar-nominated films most recently for the whole family. Here is a display I'm pretty proud of the work that our patrons made that we put on display. I think it was in the month of April. We put that on display in our display case. At the top, we have got Margot Gami. Our teacher's name is Margot, and she teaches origami. And then we've got some Legos that the children created in Lego Mania on the other two shelves. We've had 2 events for our new poetry series. I'm working with Rebecca Black. She's the Poet Laureate for Albany. Our first series was a reading by Rebecca and Christina Hutchins, who was the first poet, or maybe she wasn't the first Poet Laureate, but she was the Poet Laureate before Rebecca. And our last poetry series just happened last week, and it was amazing. We had kids from 6 years old up to 80-year-olds reading anything from singing songs to limericks to reading other people's poetry, reading their own poetry. It was wonderful. And we'll be taking a break to plan in the summer and starting back up again in the fall with more poetry events for all ages. And speaking of all ages, we have a lot of children's and teen programming. Everything from baby bounce to career workshops. We just had a LinkedIn career workshop on Sunday, and I wasn't there, but my teen librarian told me she had over 20 people there, so it was very successful. And then, of course, we have a lot of summer programming. Our theme this year is a universe of stories for the summer reading game. Adults and children can participate in this game. We're trying to give out more prizes than previous years so that everybody wins. You just have to participate. We have lots of children's performers coming in. The first show is the East Bay Vivarium is going to bring their reptiles on June 15th. And we have some other summer programs. We have outreach with the Senior Center and the Center for the Blind. We've got music performances planned. And we, of course, have our regular writing, music, and art workshops. We've got some special workshops, too, for the family. And, of course, our Brown Bag Speaker Series. One that I'm excited about that's coming up is this man who makes these mandalas. If you can see in the bottom left corner, these are huge mandalas. And then on the right picture is of a screenshot of our promotion for our Pride. It's Pride Month, so we're having some short films, and we'll have the filmmakers there for a Q&A session.
Thank you.
I can answer any questions if anyone has questions.
Well, I'll ask a question. It's about books. Because there are some folks in town who, there's a big controversy throughout the county about policies for getting rid of books that weren't checked out very often.
Mm-hmm.
And the complaints trickled up to us that, the libraries in Alameda County were destroying books, and that was terrible. And modern libraries have different policies about books because they're just only one aspect of what a modern library does because there's in the digital age. But I just wanted to check in and find out how that issue is going. Is it still percolating? Is it resolved? What's up with that?
There's this kind of controversy. I think every library in the United States every public library has had this kind of controversy. I don't think it's an issue as much as sort of a legacy from it's some leftover feelings about what happened. We do have a collection development policy that's open to the public to read on our website. I want to make clear too that the library doesn't throw books away. When we withdraw a book for one reason or another, unless it's very damaged, we're donating those books to organizations. But I also can't speak too much to our collection development policy because that is organized in Fremont. So we have a central collection development team. And yes, our staff does look through our materials to weed. I think of weeding like gardening, right? So you're getting rid of the weeds, but making room for new books. It's not that we're just getting rid of things. So they weed for condition and basic things. If things are out of date and we need a new copy. But for the most part, our collection development is done centrally. So I can refer people to that department if they have further questions about it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other? No questions? Okay, then let's.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move along to the review of advisory body work plans, and I'm going to suggest that we take the library advisory board first, since it kind of pairs with what we have just heard.
Hi, my name is Sarah Levin, and I'm the chair of the library board. Our work plan this year, well, thankfully, you just passed our funds relationship with the county, so thank you for that. Our recent initiatives include advising the City Council on our contract with the Alameda County to continue to offer all of the hours that we do offer our community through the two Library Services Acts of 1994 and 2006. We have appointed a new board member to be a representative to the Alameda County Library Advisory Commission, and that is Amy Appel. We have 4 new library board members this year, so we're excited about that. And our initiatives for this year are to advise the council on the contract with the Alameda County Library, to recommend the appointment of an Alameda representative to the Alameda County Library Advisory Commission, to work with the Alameda Library Manager on recommendations for the expenditure of the Young Bequest, which is a bequest that we've had for many years, and we still have some funds there, so we will hopefully get to that soon. And also to support and promote the Albany Library in the community, emphasizing the library's role in promoting the city's strategic plan goals of engaging our diverse community, promoting health and wellness, creating cultural facilities and opportunities, and investigating ways to support the arts. We also are advocates for state and national library issues as appropriate. Finally, we have a new initiative to explore and/or encourage potential partnerships within the community by the library. I also just want to point out that our initiative last year, or 2 years ago, I should say, included an initiative to investigate the collection development policies of the county library, but we did decide that that issue has been examined and explored, so we decided to remove it for this term. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Just a comment. I love a lot of the things you're doing. This was in the slideshow before, but this idea of partnering with different organizations like the Regional Park District, that backpack idea, I think is great. I hadn't heard of it, and I love that you can now get a backpack and take it to a park, and you have a parking pass and an admission pass, and it'll get more people out into the woods.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the partnerships that the county library has been doing. So.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Anything?
Do you know how much is left in the Young Bequest, as I look at Heather?
I think it's around $30,000 at this point.
Okay. And do you happen to remember what it's been used for in the past?
A lot of the recent upgrades to the Edith Stone Room were what we spent most recently, which I think was maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I'm sorry. I don't have the exact date, but a lot of the audiovisual supplies in that room are thanks to the Young Bequest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything more?
Just as an aside, there's a librarian from the University of Chicago who's in the news right now. Have you heard about that?
Oh, geez. No, I haven't.
It's about Jeopardy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you
tell you
so
later.
much.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful work. Pardon?
Next we have-
Is there anyone who would like to do public comment on the library work plan? Okay, then let's move along to the planning and zoning.
We have Elizabeth Waddy, Chair. Is this ours? Okay.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor Nason, Vice Mayor McQuaid, and honorable council members. I'm Elizabeth Waddy, Chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, here tonight to present our 2-year work plan. Over the past 2 years, the Commission has had a number of major achievements, including completion and adoption of the residential design guidelines, amendments to the parking ordinance, cannabis regulations, and density bonus ordinance, recommendations to the city's economic development plan and associated amendments to the commercial parking standards and permitted use tables, and several other code amendments related to side yard encroachments and unit per land area requirements. The Department and Commission continue to process a high volume of applications over the last 2 years. In 2017, 80 planning applications were processed in total, with 23 residential remodels and 6 conditional use permits reviewed by the Commission. In 2018, 91 planning applications were processed, with 16 residential remodels, 1 tentative map, and 1 conditional use permit for a new business processed by the Commission. The priority of our work plan for the next 2 years is to implement housing element policies that facilitate new development by modifying existing development standards for greater flexibility. Specific initiatives include facilitating development of housing, including mixed-use and transit-oriented development, updating codes to support housing and urban development, including relooking at our floor area regulations for multi-unit developments, sign ordinance amendments, initiating review and consideration of historical policies, and preparation of a soft story ordinance. Though not specifically related to our work plan, there are other efforts underway that will be coming before the Zoning Commission. These include the San Pablo Avenue Design Guidelines, review of cannabis regulations that will then be referred to the council, and continuous efforts to implement state housing policies, including our ongoing efforts to process accessory dwelling units consistent with state law. Lastly, our staff has started to track the duration and public participation of the Planning and Zoning Commission hearings. 2 tables are available for the council's review that show the number of meetings, attendance, and number of speakers and meeting lengths. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Councilmember Barnes? No?
No, I do.
Oh, you do?
I don't need to go first, that's all. If anyone else-
Well, I don't think you've gone first yet, Councilmember Moss. Why don't you take it away?
Okay. The only question I had, the work plan looks fine. I wondered if you'd noticed any change in the kind of issues you were dealing with since the 2016 election and we passed Measure N that allowed us to change parking requirements for housing. And I know in my time on planning and zoning that parking was always an issue. I'm wondering if there's been any kind of diminishment of that kind of thing on planning and zoning.
Sure. I can weigh in over about the last year. I've only had the pleasure of serving on the commission for the last year, so I don't have experience prior to that. But over the last year, we have had a handful of parking waivers sought. And I would say for the most part, they haven't been terribly controversial. I think we've had, 1 or 2 speakers on the occasional application who've come out with some concerns about parking waivers, but generally speaking, I would say they've been fairly uncontroversial over the last year, and perhaps I can refer to Anne to weigh in on her experience.
I would say that's definitely the case. One application that came to the commission earlier this year is actually the first multifamily development that we've had come in under the new parking regulations. We got through that in 2 meetings, which you may remember from your days. A project of that scope, an infill project with mixed use, would have taken a lot longer than that.
Yeah. So,
Where is this project?
904 Masonic.
I'll go find it, thanks.
Are you done with questions?
Sure.
Okay, then actually I'll ask Vice Mayor McQuaid, any questions? No? Councilmember Moss.
So following up on this, Measure N really just let parking control revert to planning and zoning. It did not require any changes, as I recall, and that.
Well, specifically what it did was delegated authority back to the council to set parking regulations by standard ordinance. And so as part of that, in the previous work plan, we worked with the commission during 2017 to craft regulations that were more modernized in terms of ratios and practices.
Okay, so the state exerted control on, at least on parking near transit vis-a-vis ADUs, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right now really the only provision that we have as far as state law establishing requirements for ADUs. Previously, the multifamily was set at 2 parking spaces per unit, regardless of size. We now have that at 1 space per unit.
Okay, so here's my question. In Sacramento, there was a lot of well-coordinated activity on housing bills in 2017. There was the package of about 20 bills, I don't remember, but the big one was SB 35. Last year was kind of a mess. This year is, I think they had over 200 housing bills at the start of the session, and most of them are gone. So it's turning out to be a mess as well. But so my question is, how long, let's just go back to 2017 and the coherent package of bills that were passed then. How long does it take that activity to trickle down to what you do in planning and zoning? Does it take, presumably the legislature hands these off to HCD. HCD writes some regs. They come down to our level. So is this a 2-year process or a 6-year process? What are you seeing on planning and zoning?
I mean, at least in my experience, I think it really depends. I think it depends on the exact bill that's been passed, how clear the regulations are written in the law, vice are sort of subject to implementation, sort of direction from at the state level, and how much of that is directing, sort of trumping local jurisdictions' authority to make local rules, or whether it's setting some other type of policy guidance. So I think, I don't know, I guess that's my answer, is it really depends what it is. I think ADUs are an example where, it was a fairly quick implementation that was required to be in compliance with state law. I think there are other examples of laws that affect land use that are allow still for a greater level of discretion at a local level. So I don't know, Anne, if you had anything to add to that?
I would actually echo that sentiment, and just to give you 2 examples, the ADU legislation, when that became effective, that was pretty immediate and that was fairly easy to implement. A bill like Senate Bill 35, which, if a project fulfills certain requirements in terms of providing affordable housing and meeting certain site characteristics, that can be reviewed at a staff level. I think there was a little bit of a steeper learning curve when that legislation went into effect, because there really was no model for it. So that took quite a bit longer, I think, for jurisdictions and practitioners to understand the appropriate implementation.
I have an ulterior motive. I mean, you hear a lot in the press that Sacramento is going to pass all these rules and it's going to speed up housing. And I'm like, no, actually, I think it might slow it down. But I'm just, if you'd care to express any opinions, either of you, I'm happy to hear them. But that's all I have to say.
Okay, any final comments on the work plan for planning and zoning? Okay, any public comments on either the work plan for planning and zoning, or last call for the work plan on the library board? All right.
I just have a question. I remember reading an article, I was just trying to find it, and I guess it wasn't El Cerrito, where there was some city that was providing funding if people would build an ADU, and they would help pay for the building of it, and then they had to promise to rent it to somebody as affordable housing or somebody with low income. I was wondering if that's something that the plan, if your commission looks into something like that, or is that something higher up and it's more of a city thing? I just wasn't sure, but just wanted to ask. Thank you.
I would suggest you direct that question to Ms. Waddy. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the work plans?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes. We move on to the public hearing on resolution number 2019-38, a resolution amending the City of Albany master fee schedule. Could we have a staff report, please?
So this should be fairly standard. It's something that we do every year. We go through and we update fees based on what it costs the city to actually do some of these services or copies or whatever. And some of them we do by CPI, depending, and some of them we actually, figure out if we contract that out, how much that costs. And so the updates vary from year to year. This year, Public Works and the Fire Department updated a number of theirs by CPI, and I want to thank Anne for catching some of my math error. Then there was a few changes on the recreation side that had to do with some of the changes that they're making to the tennis courts, and then also they're increasing fees for the rental of some rooms at the senior center to be more in line with the other community center room rentals. And that should be it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I had some questions. I think I'd asked you before. There was, as I recall, a while back, we passed a fee or what the rates would be if we put in electric charging stations, and I never saw this in the fees. Is that still something on the books, or is that something? I know we have no electric charging stations yet, but wouldn't that be in this somewhere?
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay, under community development, the place I didn't look.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do. So it is in there. Okay, so the other question I had was there are rates on public works equipment. You know, if we use these different, but we don't rent this out to the public. So I'm presuming this is what we would charge somebody if there's in some emergency situation we had to send the equipment out. This is
Right.
what
So
they
if
would be
something gets
charged later.
broken and we have to go out and fix it, or, you know, something like that, someone's contractor did something that broke city whatever, and we had to charge them out, this is telling them what we would charge them if that happened.
Just my impression is those rates are very reasonable. You know, knowing
Sorry, you can't rent the
what I
equipment.
know about construction and stuff, if that's a deal, if somebody is only paying those rates, so.
And there are a handful, I know community development is currently going through one, and I think Public Works is looking at whether these rates are reasonable or whether they should be increased, or, you know, things like that. So this is something that we are also actively working on, like we talked about before with revenue generation and all that kind of stuff. These are fees, so they will never exceed the amount that the city, you know, the cost the city incurs. But we really need to look in and say, you know, is this what it costs us, or does it cost us more?
If I understand that we can't make profit on these types of things, but they are in light of what the commercial market would charge for these kind of things, extremely competitive. So,
Just also a note to clarify there, it would be the staff time as well. So it would be the staff time, which is included in the master fee schedule, and the equipment.
Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is state law requires us to more or less create fee structures on a break-even basis that just covers cost, but they don't create specific criteria or methodology for us calculating the fees. Is that a fair statement?
So, so there's a difference between a fee and a tax, and the difference between the fee and the tax is a fee cannot exceed the city's cost that it incurs to actually provide the service. Any amount above and beyond that, the city's cost is considered a tax and has to go to voters. And so they don't say, oh, you have to calculate it this way or that way, but we have to be able to substantiate how we came up with this is the city's cost.
Okay.
Questions? A couple of questions. One, it's kind of a general comment question combined that I think I've asked every year, but someday could we round all our numbers so they're all even? Just, you don't have to answer right now.
I would love to do that. Zeros and fives are my favorite, but a lot of these were just increased by CPI, and so that's why we didn't round.
You have something against odd numbers? You just want even numbers?
It just seems silly to me to some of these
Zeros
numbers,
and
but that's
fives.
okay. Moving along. Under Public Works, which I think is about page 17 for bicycle vehicle parking, talking about accessible curbs, and it gives the fees, but on the top it says accessible parking residential zones only require prior city approval. Oh, it got changed, didn't it, from my comment before? Nicole? It got changed? I'm sorry. Never mind, it got fixed. And then my other question, I guess, about that, can those fees be reduced for cause? It is a lot of money, and I can imagine that perhaps it's prohibitive for some people. And I'd like to see us at least consider how we could reduce the fees if requested.
I would have to look into what this would go back to the city attorney as to whether that would be considered using public funds for non-public purposes. So I would have to do more information before I could tell you whether we could do that or not.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, any comments? Do I hear a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, public comment.
I just had a few questions. First of all, I just want to start by thanking Peggy for asking that question about reducing the fees. I appreciate it, whatever happens. My first question is, I know this is going to sound really naive, so I apologize in advance, but I don't understand why why we charge for staff time if the staff is paid. Like, what would they do at work if they didn't do these things? Would they do something else? It just seems kind of, I'm sure there's some obvious answer to that, but just $239.50 an hour for the city attorney, but what would he do if the public didn't need him to do stuff? That's my first question. Okay, and then I'll give my questions, and then my second one is, I really appreciate that it says reduced by an amount equal to the proportion of the building area for one of the fees, and that if it's allocated for affordable units, and I was just curious how affordable was being defined there, because I know it has a wide range of definitions. And then I had a question about the sidewalks, reconstruction of curb, gutter, sidewalk, driveway, landscaping, et cetera, $146. I was just curious because I'm confused because of the previous meeting I went to, maybe it was, I can't remember what it was, but was talking about the sidewalk, and I'm wondering I'm under the impression that the citizens of Albany are responsible for repairing the sidewalk in front of their house, even though the sidewalk doesn't actually belong to us, because actually from the meeting I just went to last week, so I'm confused about that. So if you go to fix it, you have to pay for the fix, and you have to give $146. And then I don't understand what an address change is for $320. And then my other question, is the fire department charges $300 an hour, and so does the ambulance. And I'm wondering if that means that if you have a fire in your house and you call the fire department, are they going to charge you $300 an hour, or when do they charge you? And I'm wondering what the anti-scavenger ordinance is. Does that mean somebody who doesn't have any food to eat and looks in a garbage can and then they get fined? And obviously, if they had the money to buy food, to pay the fine, they would be buying food. And then I just wanted to tell you that there are several typos in this document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Do all these fees go into the general fund? Are they designated for special funds?
Most of them go into the general fund. I think in here is listed the recreation. Every time someone rents a room, there's a couple dollars that goes into a reserve fund to, upgrade facilities and maintain those kind of things.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Any further public comment? No, you'll get your answers offline. Thanks. I should probably mention, because it's come up again and again in this meeting, that when people have questions for city staff or the city council, probably the best way to ask them is to send them in by email and get something in writing back that could actually be part of the public record. But it isn't really an interactive forum because of Brown Act limitations. So do we have a motion to approve the master fee schedule?
I'll move that we adopt Resolution 2019-38, amending the City of Albany master fee schedule.
I'll second.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Nason?
Yes.
The motion carries.
And we move on to, well, I think we are just about done. We have no unfinished business, no new business. We do have an opportunity to announce future events and request future agenda items. Does anyone have anything to announce? Okay. Vice Mayor McQuaid, anything to announce? Okay, then we are adjourned.